Hey everyone! It's become a bit of a tradition for me every year to send out a Christmas card that has an AR upgrade to the card, so to speak. So in addition to other things on the card, there's a QR code that allows you to scan it and it opens up an augmented reality experience that enhances the card. This year, however, I ran into a few problems that I hadn't encountered before, and so I thought I would walk you through the solution and what actually changed, and it actually ended up being a twofold issue for me, which made it especially tricky to figure out. I was banging my head against the wall for several days, so I thought I would try to spare you the trouble. It's due in part to some changes that Apple made that weren't very well publicized. Anyway, I'll describe briefly what the issue was and what initially tipped me off to the problem. So I had noticed as I was preparing. Sometimes I go back and look at some of the previous ones that I've made, and I ran into an error when even looking at some of my older ones on my phone that said the object requires a newer version of iOS, which made no sense at all because I was running the latest and greatest. The next problem, once I actually finished this year's and I had configured it the way I wanted to, uploaded the files to the web, and then when I hit them from my phone, Quick Look would open and then spin for a second and then crash quickly. And so I thought there must have been something wrong with my file. Maybe it was too big. I looked online and a lot of people said, well, Quick Look will crash if you have over 100,000 polygons, maybe, which seemed a little low in the first place, but my model was still way below that, and it didn't make sense that my file would be crashing it. Anyway, there were just a couple of funny things happening. So here's what I discovered. So first I started with my model in Reality Composer on my iPad, which I still prefer a little bit to Reality Composer Pro on the desktop. It's just a little simpler to use and easier to understand. So I imported my model, then exported, and I still prefer to use a reality file. I'm hoping that USDZ catches up soon, but it does better with things like real world anchors and things of that nature. So exported as a reality file. When I open this thing up in Safari, Quick Look just crashes with no warning, with no error message whatsoever, so there's not really a whole lot to go off of there. So I thought, well, maybe if I open it up in a different browser, maybe I'll get a different experience. So I popped it open in Chrome on my iPhone, and I did get a little bit more information. It says that the file was forbidden, which tipped me off to the fact that it might be some sort of a permissions issue. So for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why, but Reality Composer for my iPad, and I'm not sure if this is a me problem or if this is a widespread issue, but it saves the files with very limited permissions. So it's an easy way to solve that, and I'll show you a couple of different means of going about that. First, you can just open it up in Finder, and if you get info there, you can either Command I or right click and click on get info. You'll see permissions down here, and I have read and write access for my user, but everybody else has no access. So that's a problem. If we want to change that, we should select read only, not read and write, because we don't want other people to be able to mess with it at all. So read only access for everybody else. Or my preferred code editor, Nova, also provides means of doing this in a very similar fashion. Get info over here, and it gives this little checklist here. So read access for group and world, I would probably suggest. So anybody who hits this file has the ability to read it. Also, if you log in typically on like the web interface for your host, you can find that file in there, and there's typically a means provided in there to change permissions. So there are a few ways of going about this. So after all of that was done, I click apply, then I upload that file, and the permissions are now open. So after I got the permissions issue solved, The next thing I ran into was opening it up on my iPhone and hitting that message that said object requires a new version of iOS, which made no sense because I was running iOS 17.2, the latest and greatest. So I scoured the internet looking for an answer to this problem, and there was not a whole lot to be found, but I did find one comment in a forum, and I will link to it in the description because I can't remember where I found it. It was either the Apple Developer Forum or Reddit, but that person said that iOS 17 now requires reality files to be served as a different MIME type. So the solution to this is fairly straightforward if you're running an Apache server. All it requires is an edit to the htaccess file. So if you have an htaccess file already, go ahead and pop it open. If not, create an htaccess file. You just do that by saving a plain old text document that is called .htaccess. The trick is that the period tells the system to hide the file. So if you have a text editor, preferably a code editor, they typically have a feature that allows you to view hidden files. So pop that open. All we have to do is add one line. It's add type space model / vnd.reality space .reality. So what this is doing is just telling your server to add a MIME type for any file that has the extension .reality, and then this is the MIME type that it needs to be served up as per Apple's specifications. So I hope that answers your question. Subscribe and stay tuned for more daring capers like this solving weird questions with augmented reality.